So someone wanted to know about the efferent pathway for the near reflex. And the near reflex is efferent, and that means it's a motor pathway only. Motor. It goes from your brain to the target organ. There's no afferent part of this. And why that's important is because when we're talking about the near reflex, we're talking about pupil constriction, but also the other things that happen at near are your muscles, medial rectus muscles, converge so that you can look at the target at near. And you have to change the shape of your lens, which is called accommodation. So the near reflex is actually a synkinetic triad of pupillary constriction, which increases the depth of field at near, convergence, so that you don't get double vision because you're looking at a target that's very close to you, so the eyes have to converge. And you have to change the shape of the lens to increase the power so that you can focus on the near target. So that's because the focal length equals 1 over the dioptric power. So if we're going to look at something at 33 1/3 centimeters, we need to generate +3 diopter of focal accommodation to see something at near clearly. So this near reflex, of course, you have to tell your third nerve to do this. The third nerve lives in the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculus. So this is the midbrain, and this is the third nerve nucleus. So the third nerve nucleus is in charge of telling the pupil to constrict, to tell the medial rectus to fire and converge, and also to tell the ciliary body to fire and relax the zonules and change the shape of the lens to give it more power for accommodation. So supranuclear input, supranuclear, is above the nucleus to tell the nucleus of 3 to tell the eye muscles and the ciliary body and also the pupillary muscle to fire for the synkinetic near reflex. And that lives somewhere in the thalamo-mesencephalic junction. It's not clear exactly where this near center is, and that's why you might have trouble looking it up, because it doesn't have a name, doesn't have a precise location. It's just somewhere in the supranuclear pathway, presumably at the thalamo-mesencephalic junction. So your cortex tells that near center, we want to read something at near. Please constrict the pupil, converge the medial recti, and accommodate the lens. That is the near reflex. The other thing that's confusing about it is it's called reflex, but it's not really a reflex. You actually have some control over making it happen. And it's efferent. And the reason it's important clinically is when the light reaction is decreased, that's the afferent pathway. And the near reflex can test the integrity of the efferent pathway. So when we have light near dissociation of the pupils, we know there's a disconnect between the afferent input, the light pathway, and the efferent output, which is the near pathway. And so that has a differential diagnosis, light near dissociation of the pupils. And it's helpful clinically whenever we have a decreased light reaction to prove that the decreased light reaction is not because you have a third nerve palsy or an efferent problem, but that you actually have an afferent problem or a disconnection between the light and the near pathway called light near dissociation. So the near pathway and the near reflex, supranuclear, at or about the thalamo-mesencephalic junction, useful for pupillary constriction, convergence, and accommodation at near.